G'day, welcome back to a chilly South Africa, and this is South African Prepper. So for today's video, information-driven preparedness. So it's very interesting that on this channel we've got people all over the world preparing for different reasons. Now for us to make an informative decision about preparedness, we need to understand why we are preparing. So across the world, there are different countries, and every country's social makeup, economic makeup is different. And these factors will always determine what you will be preparing for. And that includes natural disasters. So I found it very interesting. Since 2020, you would have seen across the American channels that they've talked a lot about the elites, the rich people, the people running the world. They apparently have been building and preparing bunkers for themselves. Now, once you hear of such stories, those immediately become indicators of something to happen. Because the elites of the world, those people that fly to Davos, they tell you to not use fossil fuel, but they fly with their private planes. Once they are preparing for a certain event, okay, in this case, they are building bunkers. So they are definitely preparing for something. So for us, the layman, the normal guy, the taxpayer, the hard-working citizens of this world, we have to look at indicators or red flags of situations that will possibly put ourselves and our families in danger. And this is where the informative preparedness title comes in. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I think at this stage there is almost a common theme that the world at large is in danger of various things. In Europe, you've got the Russian-Ukrainian war. So that is a threat and a red flag to Europe that if this thing escalates, the whole of Europe could be pulled into a world war. And this also means that nuclear weapons possibly could be used if either side gets so desperate that that will be the last resort. So for Europe, that is a red flag, and it's an indicator and a reason why you as a European should be preparing. In a country like, example, America, you have got the collapse of the US dollar. The US dollar has been used for many years to control the world, okay, the monopoly of the petrodollar, and that is busy falling away. And you can see the banks in America suffering greatly because of the sanctions against certain countries. So that for us is an indicator. If I was an American, I would make a plan to be able to buy stuff in the near future without the US dollar. A simple example might be gold and silver or precious metals of some sorts. So let's relate this to South Africa. And I think South Africa has always been used as a testing station for certain things. The whole opening of the borders, the whole rainbow nation, diversity, regime change, radical regime change. All of these three examples has been used and implemented in South Africa over the last 30 years. And they have all been pushed and they've all been planned by the higher powers, the people running the world, the likes of the Americans, the UN, the IMF, the Davos people that decided that South Africa needs to be pushed in a certain direction. And I've said this before in other videos, that chaos is always created to the benefit of somebody. If you look at governments around the world, you'll understand that I don't think there's any government in the world that's not in the pockets of these elites. All of them are being paid, all of them are being trained. I recently read an article about how the IMF actually trains certain individuals, like the Prime Minister of Canada, that Trudeau character, and the President of France currently, Macron. These are all stooges and puppets trained by the IMF to infiltrate governments so they can actually control these governments. And it's throughout the world it's the same. I don't think there's a country that is not touched by these elites and their trained prime ministers. Look at UK. I think the only countries untouched might be China and Russia, and maybe South Africa, because South Africa is so corrupt. I think the IMF has totally lost control of the South African government. But they are playing into the hands of the IMF because they are taking out loans, they're stealing the money, and they are just creating chaos around them, destruction. So informative preparedness is all about asking yourself the question, why am I preparing and for what am I preparing? So let's say, for an example, I'm preparing for a drought. Okay, so if I'm preparing for a drought, I immediately identify that we will be having a lack of water. So we will be implementing maybe storing water, maybe drilling wells, maybe building sand dams to store surface water. So once you understand what you are preparing for, it is much easier to prepare for what is coming. If you're gonna be preparing a broad-based preparedness strategy like most of us do, you're gonna be running around like a headless chicken. So in South Africa, we do know that the social construct of South Africa is in such a state that we do know that our whole civilization, the way we live in South Africa, at some point will collapse. Okay, and this is brought on by various things: the electricity crisis, unemployment, corruption of such a state that they don't even hide it anymore. People want to stay in power. Extremely high inflation. Inflation so high that within our lifetime, people in South Africa won't be able to afford food. So that is the indicators that South Africa is very close to a social collapse. And then obviously in South Africa, the politicians screaming and shouting the whole time, white people are bad, white monopoly capital, white people own everything. It is because of whites that the country is in such a bad state, which are obviously all lies. It is not factually so, but they are using the platforms of power and influence to tell the masses that there is somebody to blame, and it is unfortunately the white people. So you have all these things running around, happening in the world, and they're very similar. In actual fact, you can see a golden line throughout the world. It's like a script written for a movie, and it's playing in front of our eyes. It's happening every single day. And it seems like we are definitely in the world heading for a food shortage. We are heading for more social unrest. We are heading towards racial unrest. Because these days, white people in the Western world are just a trash. Although they have built the West. But we are apparently, according to the American government, white people are bad. Extremely bad. Extremely bad. So having an informative preparedness strategy is all about understanding what you are preparing for. So in South Africa, we are preparing for racial unrest, social unrest, and us as a family, we are preparing for hunger. I do believe that we are going to see, it's going to happen two ways in South Africa. Either we're just going to run out of farmers, or we are going to run out of money for people to actually afford to buy the bag of maize meal or pap. People are just going to get to a point, the guy at the cashier, the guy at the petrol station putting on your petrol, the guy working at your factory somewhere, the guy cleaning or the lady cleaning your bathrooms at the office park where you work, they're just not going to have enough money at some stage to buy food anymore. So we're either going to run out of food, or people are just not going to be able to afford. So we as a family have made an informative preparedness strategy, and one of them are based on food. Okay, and it's not just storing food, it is literally producing food. There are too many farmers in South Africa, commercial farmers, that only specialize in planting 2 or 3 crops. And that's what they do. They still go to the local supermarket in town to go buy the rest of the groceries. And we've spoken about this before. We've spoken about the different levels of self-sufficiency, where people are able to produce 25, 50%, 75 and 90%. We've made a video about this before, where we've urged preppers around the world to make sure that you have the capabilities and the capacity to actually produce your own food. Because at some states, there's a heavy pressure on the food system in the world. Heavy. I mean, they want us to eat bugs. They want us to go vegetarian. They want us to eat factory-made processed foods. I mean, nobody's going to be able to survive on that. And if it gets to that stage where we have to eat food that comes from a factory that's controlled by the elites, believe me, we're going to go hungry. And when people go hungry, people do horrible things. This is South Africa Prepper. Just some thoughts for today. Please like, share, and subscribe. And God bless.